The classroom floated in perfect zero gravity, a shimmering bubble of advanced technology and interstellar knowledge. Holographic projections of mythological creatures hovered in midair, twisting and shimmering in colors that defied even the most precise alien description. Professor Thalrex VYNN adjusted the folds of his ceremonial robes, a ritual as much as a show of control, before stepping to the center of the room. "Attention!" His voice rang, precise and unwavering, cutting through the low hum of the classroom's anti-gravity thrusters. Alien students snapped into attention with instinctive grace, some hovering with delicate tentacles folded, others with wings tucked neatly against their backs. This was a class unlike any other in the galaxy, and Thalrex's pride in maintaining perfection was absolute. He turned to the first projection, the Luminara Shadow Serpent. Its semi-transparent body undulated through a holographic forest, flickering in a spectrum of iridescent shadows. "Observe its reaction to the etheric stimuli," Thalrex instructed, tapping a floating console. "Take note of the photonic resonances. This will be on your midterm practical exam." The students nodded in synchronized respect, their forms a blur of alien precision. Thalrex inhaled deeply, feeling the familiar satisfaction of a class running exactly as planned. Everything was under control. Everything, that is, until the airlock hissed open. 2 figures tumbled into the classroom, untrained, ungainly, utterly human. They floated past the airlock with a mixture of awe and confusion, arms flailing slightly as they tried to stabilize themselves. Is this the mythological species class?" one asked, voice tinged with polite curiosity rather than fear. The second human glanced around, eyes wide with fascination. "Wow, these creatures are real?" Thalrex froze, a deep color creeping into his otherwise pale skin. Humans. In his class. Today, the universe itself seemed to mock him. "Humans," he said, his voice tight with irritation. "This is not an introductory course. You were not expected." One of the humans, tall and wiry, floated closer to the projections, ignoring the professor's tone. "We're here to learn," he said simply. "We've read everything about mythological species. We want to see them in action." The room erupted with murmurs. Alien students' appendages twitched, wings fluttered nervously. Some emitted soft clicks of disbelief. Thalrex's meticulous sense of order began to unravel at the edges. "Learning is one thing," he snapped, voice cutting through the room like a scalpel. "But observing requires precision, discipline, and adherence to protocol. You, humans, do not possess the training for this environment." The second human, a woman with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, smiled faintly. "We'll follow instructions," she said. "We just learn differently." Thalrex felt a flicker of dread. Learn differently, a polite understatement for chaos. He returned to the Luminara Shadow Serpent projection, waving his claws for attention. "Observe, record, note reactions. Nothing more." One human floated closer to a minor holographic creature, a floating, luminescent orb with translucent tendrils. The alien students recoiled instinctively, some letting out high-pitched chirps of alarm. The human extended a hand gently, and the creature's tendrils slowly reached out in response. A ripple of astonishment swept through the class. Thalrex's jaw tightened. "Do not touch!" he barked. "The risk of contamination, of misbehavior, of—" "It's okay," the human said softly, almost instinctively. "It trusts me." The room fell silent, except for the low hum of the classroom's life support system. Alien students exchanged uncertain glances. Such a thing had never happened in their studies. Creatures did not trust humans. They obeyed or fled. "Trust is irrelevant," Thalrex insisted, though his voice betrayed the first crack of uncertainty. "Observation is about control, not sentiment." The humans continued politely but boldly interacting with other projections. A small winged creature fluttered near the ceiling, eyes glowing in curiosity. One human mimicked its fluttering motion, causing the creature to respond in kind. Alien students gawked. Some muttered soft clicks, the alien equivalent of laughter. "Disruptive!" Thalrex shouted, pacing rapidly in 0G. His robes swirled around him as he attempted to maintain authority. You will follow protocol or... But the humans were not deterred. Their movements were deliberate, calculated in ways alien methodology could not predict. Where Thalrex saw risk, they saw opportunity. The creatures responded positively, some in ways the professor had only theorized in years of study. Chaos, however, was inevitable. One of the larger projections, a telepathic luminescent fauna, panicked at a sudden flicker in the classroom lighting, darting through the holographic forest. The humans reacted instinctively. One extended a hand, the other spoke softly, and the creature slowed, circling cautiously around them rather than fleeing entirely. Thalrex blinked. This works? He could not reconcile the outcome with the centuries of rigid protocol he had taught. Alien students whispered anxiously among themselves, some gaping, some secretly impressed. Sit down! Thalrex commanded, though his tone had lost some of its finality. Control. Observation. Discipline. You, humans, will understand that failure to comply has consequences. The first human floated back, eyes still wide with fascination yet calm. We're learning, he said simply. It's just different. Thalrex's chest tightened. His reputation, his prestige, his careful preparations, all teetered on the edge of collapse. The humans were not only surviving the class but seemingly thriving. The professor felt an unfamiliar sensation creeping through him, the tiniest flicker of fear, and disturbingly admiration. He took a deep breath, attempting to regain composure. Very well. If you insist on participating, observe quietly. Record everything. Do not interfere further. The humans nodded, perfectly obedient in appearance, though the glint in their eyes suggested otherwise. Alien students settled hesitantly, some trying to emulate human calm, others still muttering incredulously. Thalrex returned to the Shadow Serpent, trying to focus on the lesson. But in the back of his mind, he knew the first seeds of disaster, and possibly revelation, had been planted. Humans were unpredictable. Humans were ingenious. And Thalrex's carefully ordered universe had just begun to unravel. Above them, the holographic creatures floated, glowing, reacting to the new, unorthodox presence in ways the professor could neither control nor anticipate. His pride bristled. His authority trembled. And somewhere deep inside, a small, begrudging voice whispered, "This might be interesting." The class had begun. And for Professor Thalrex Vyyn, the worst day of his career had already arrived. The classroom had settled into a tense rhythm, though it was far from calm. Holographic projections of mythological species danced in midair, some reacting to environmental cues, others moving independently with programmed instincts. Professor Thalrex Vyyn hovered near the central console, claws gripping the rail tightly, eyes darting between the floating students and the delicate creatures. His mind, always precise, struggled to accommodate the anomaly that had entered his perfectly orchestrated lesson. Humans. Observe the Nerathian whisperwings, Thalrex commanded, gesturing to a flock of translucent, bat-like creatures that emitted soft harmonic vibrations. Record their communication patterns. Any deviation is unacceptable. Humans watch but do not interact. One human, Elias Hunter, tilted his head, curiosity glowing in his brown eyes. Why can't we interact? Maybe it responds to gentle contact differently than we expect? Thalrex froze mid-gesture. You will not touch them. Control and observation are paramount. Interaction introduces error, contamination, chaos. The second human, Lena Voss, hovered closer to the whisperwings, her movements fluid and careful. We're not here to ruin your experiment, Professor. We just try to understand them as they are. Thalrex's pride bristled. As they are? The whisperwings were precisely measured constructs of centuries of xenobiology. Understanding them as they are was irrelevant. Only data mattered. Yet, he watched. And immediately, the creatures responded differently. One whisperwing floated closer to Lena, tilting its wings as if listening. Another emitted a soft harmonic pulse directly toward Elias. Alien students gasped. None of this was in the manual. None of this had been anticipated. "Stop that immediately!" Thalrex barked. His voice quivered slightly, barely perceptible, but enough that a few of the students noticed. "Observation," I said. "Not, whatever this is." The humans, unbothered, continued with careful gestures, speaking soft, rhythmic tones, almost instinctively matching the creature's patterns. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the whisper wings began a coordinated flight, circling around the humans instead of scattering in panic. "Remarkable," whispered one alien student to another, barely audible. They're controlling it without instruments." Thalrex's claws clenched. "Do not whisper!" he snapped. The murmur spread anyway, a ripple of excitement through the class. "They're succeeding where I expect them to fail," he realized with a jolt of alarm. Suddenly, the classroom lighting flickered, a minor glitch in the orbital power grid. One of the larger holographic creatures, a telepathic luminescent fauna with tentacles that glowed like liquid light, shivered in panic, darting toward the center of the room. Alien students recoiled, some emitting anxious clicks. Elias instinctively extended a hand, fingers spread, and spoke softly in earth tones. The creature hesitated mid-dash, tentacles quivering. Lena mirrored his gestures, moving slowly to flank the creature, offering a sense of calm. The alien fauna paused, then floated gently to hover beside the humans, its glow stabilizing. "Impossible!" Thalrex hissed. His voice was barely audible over the ambient hum, but the room seemed to freeze. "How can they succeed with no training?" He flapped his wings in agitation, hovering over the humans. "This is not protocol! You have disrupted the entire classification sequence." Elias turned to him, eyes steady. "We're just adapting, Professor. Sometimes creatures respond better to curiosity than to fear or control." Thalrex opened his mouth, then closed it. No counterargument existed in his rigid framework. Every rule he had ever taught had been broken, successfully, by these humans. Alien students whispered excitedly, some openly cheering. The climax of the lesson approached, the Luminara shadow serpent, the rarest of all mythological species in the class. Its hologram shimmered, undulating through an etheric forest. This experiment required precise stimuli to trigger photonic resonance patterns for observation, a task that demanded exact timing, exact gestures, and complete control. Failure would render weeks of preparation meaningless. Thalrex set the controls, projecting holographic stimuli with precise intervals. "Observe carefully. Do not deviate!" His voice rang sharp as crystal, but his eyes betrayed his unease. Humans, floating nearby, merely watched, their expressions calm, thoughtful, but alert. The shadow serpent reacted. Immediately it veered off the expected path, responding first to Lena's subtle mimicry of its undulating movement. Data projections flickered, alarms blinked, and the controlled experiment teetered on the edge of chaos. "Stop!" Thalrex shouted, hovering toward them. "You will ruin everything!" Elias raised a hand. "We're not ruining it. We're helping it react naturally. It's not the simulation you think it is, it's alive, not a machine." The alien students murmured among themselves. "He's right," one thought, eyes wide. Their own training focused on strict control. No one had ever considered that an unpredictable presence could yield valid observations. As the shadow serpent glided past them, Elias and Lena mirrored its motions, a subtle synchronization forming between human and creature. Slowly, the data stream stabilized, showing the photonic patterns Thalrex had hoped to measure, patterns that had been elusive for decades. Thalrex gaped. This is accurate?" His claws trembled over the console. The creatures were performing exactly as required, but by responding to humans, not protocol. His pride recoiled, yet his mind raced. "This is brilliant, and impossible." The humans stepped back, expressions calm but triumphant. The shadow serpent hovered, its luminescence pulsing softly, as if acknowledging them. Alien students stared, a mix of awe and disbelief etched on every face. Thalrex inhaled slowly, wings tightening. "You may observe." But understand this, your methods are unprecedented and, in any other context, unacceptable. Elias smiled faintly. We just wanted to help the creatures show their potential, Professor. They're more than projections. They respond to understanding, not control. Thalrex felt a flicker of admiration buried beneath layers of frustration. He had faced chaos before, but never like this, unstructured, intuitive, and overwhelmingly effective. Alien students, witnessing this, whispered excitedly, some jotting notes furiously, hoping to learn from the humans. The bell for the next class approached, yet the room remained charged with energy. Creatures floated calmly around the humans now, their unpredictable behaviors tamed by ingenuity rather than strict methodology. Thalrex adjusted his robes, trying to regain composure, though he knew a shift had occurred. Humans had arrived, unassuming, and disrupted not only his experiment but his expectations of the galaxy's intellectual hierarchy. As the students prepared to leave, Thalrex's voice was quieter, tinged with reluctant respect. Humans, you have survived this lesson. And perhaps, you have learned something about adaptation. Elias nodded, floating toward the airlock. We'll keep learning, Professor. And maybe teach a thing or two along the way. Thalrex watched them leave, claws resting lightly on the rail. He had survived the first shock of their presence, but the day. And his career was far from over. The humans had arrived. Chaos had followed. And for the first time, Professor Thalrex VYNN wondered whether rigid control could ever match. The classroom had never been quieter, and never more tense. Holographic lights flickered softly across the zero-gravity chamber, highlighting the ethereal forms of mythological species hovering midair. Professor Thalrex VYNN hovered near the central console, claws gripping the rails so tightly that the metal groaned. Every muscle in his alien frame was taut. The final experiment of the semester, the observation of the rare Luminara shadow serpent, was about to commence, and his reputation, already fraying from the humans' earlier interventions, was on the line. Prepare the shadow serpent. Thalrex commanded, voice taut, precise, and laced with barely restrained irritation. This will demonstrate control, discipline, and the superiority of protocol-driven observation. Alien students adjusted their positions, tentacles folding, wings tucked. Holographic projectors calibrated the ethereal forest in which the shadow serpent would swim, ensuring every etheric stimulus aligned with the predetermined sequence. The creature's photonic patterns were the culmination of years of study, delicate, precise, and unforgiving. Any deviation could invalidate the experiment. The humans floated silently near the rear of the class, calm but alert. Elias tilted his head, watching the projections. Professor, may we try an observational approach? He asked gently. Thalrex's eyes narrowed. No, he snapped. Observation is not optional. There is one way to conduct this experiment, the correct way. Lena's hand hovered near a console, but she didn't touch it. We just want to help the creature respond naturally, she said softly. It's alive, not a projection. Thalrex inhaled sharply, a shiver of disbelief coursing through him. They may succeed where I cannot control. He forced himself to focus, tapping the holographic controls to initiate the experiment. The shadow serpent shimmered into view, a fluid, semi-transparent form, undulating through its ethereal environment. Photonic patterns pulsed along its body, sensitive to every stimulus Thalrex's protocol dictated. He activated the first sequence, expecting precise reactions, but the creature darted unpredictably, veering toward Elias. Stop! Thalrex shouted, claws slicing the air. Do not! But Elias extended a hand in a gesture both confident and tentative, mirroring the serpent's undulating motion. The creature hesitated, its glow stabilizing. Lena followed, moving to flank the creature, her voice soft and rhythmic. Wait, it's responding to them? Muttered one alien student. Wings fluttered nervously, tentacles quivering. Yes, whispered another, eyes wide. But that shouldn't be possible. Only the protocol should work. The shadow serpent coiled around the humans in a synchronized flow, photonic patterns stabilizing beautifully across the holographic display. Alarms on the console blinked off, sensors registering perfect resonance. Every measurement Thalrex had hoped to capture, precise, delicate, flawless, was being recorded, but not by his careful control. By intuition. By ingenuity. By humans. Thalrex's chest tightened. Impossible, he muttered, though his mind raced. They're doing exactly what I couldn't achieve with all my years of preparation. Elias's eyes met Thalrex's, calm but unwavering. We're not interfering, Professor. We're cooperating. Sometimes a creature needs trust, not control. Thalrex's wings quivered with frustration and awe. Trust is irrelevant, he hissed, yet the evidence on the display contradicted his every lesson. The humans had succeeded where strict protocol had failed. Alien students whispered excitedly, some scribbling notes, furiously, eager to understand this unorthodox method. The shadow serpent coiled higher, its photonic glow forming intricate, previously unrecorded patterns. Thalrex's heart sank and soared simultaneously. The experiment's data, invaluable for years, had been captured, through chaos, intuition, and unpredictability. Observe the resonance amplitude, Thalrex said, voice almost quieter than usual. He floated toward the console, carefully monitoring the output. Every sensor confirmed it. The human's unconventional method had stabilized the creature. The result was more refined, more detailed than any prior attempt. Alien students exchanged incredulous looks. They succeeded, whispered one softly. Without training. Without protocol. Elias smiled faintly. We didn't do anything magical. We just adapted. The creature responded because we responded to it, not the other way around. Thalrex inhaled, feeling a flicker of admiration buried deep beneath layers of pride. He had faced challenges before, but none like this, spontaneous, intuitive, and startlingly effective. The humans had not only survived his class, they had exceeded it. You may leave the creature, Thalrex finally said, voice measured, grudging respect evident. It will not harm you. And perhaps, you have learned something as well. Elias and Lena nodded, floating back toward the airlock. We'll keep learning, Elias said, voice calm but confident. And maybe teach a thing or two along the way. Thalrex watched them, claws resting lightly on the rail. Alien students lingered, observing the shadow serpent now behaving perfectly, marveling at the humans' methods. Some whispered plans to emulate them, questioning the rigid methodology they had once thought infallible. For the first time in decades, Thalrex allowed himself to consider humility. His methods were precise, controlled, undeniable, but humans had introduced creativity, adaptability, and empathy, achieving results beyond his expectations. The bell for the next class chimed softly, though no one moved immediately. Holographic projections hovered in perfect synchronization, creatures glowing gently in midair, and humans floated with calm curiosity. Thalrex exhaled slowly, wings tightening around him. The classroom had been a battlefield of control, discipline, and unpredictability, but the humans had emerged unscathed, triumphant, and respected. Thalrex's voice, softer now, echoed through the room. Humans, you have survived. And perhaps, you have taught us more than we expected. Elias glanced back with a faint grin. We're just getting started, Professor. The humans exited, leaving a classroom transformed. Alien students, once skeptical, were inspired. They began to reconsider their assumptions, realizing that the universe might not bend entirely to rules and protocol. Innovation, intuition, and the courage to act differently could yield extraordinary results. Thalrex adjusted his robes, contemplating the chaos that had become revelation. His first instinct was pride, tempered by awe. Humans, fragile, unpredictable, audacious, had demonstrated brilliance beyond expectation. For centuries, alien minds had believed control was paramount. Yet here it was, proof that ingenuity, adaptability, and courage could achieve what meticulous training could not. And somewhere deep within him, a spark of curiosity ignited. The day had been his worst, yes, but also, perhaps, the most illuminating. As the last echoes of laughter, whispers, and floating footsteps faded through the zero-gravity chamber, Thalrex v. Wyman allowed a single thought to surface, quiet and almost amused: the humans have arrived. And they have changed everything.